gunshot pierced the cold morning air of Halloween, shattering the quiet of a suburban neighborhood. The scent of gunpowder mingled with the sweet aroma of Halloween candy, neatly prepared in a white porcelain bowl on the living room table. A slender body lay motionless on the bedroom floor, blood spreading from a small wound on her head. It was Kristen Trickle, 21 years old. Her husband, Colby Trickle, claimed she had taken her own life in a moment of despair. But the dark truth behind her death was far more disturbing and complex than it initially appeared. Kristen's phone alarm had not yet gone off. Outside the window, autumn leaves swirled in the wind, as if dancing a sorrowful waltz. The neighborhood was slowly waking up to the crisp chill of late October, unaware that a tragedy had unfolded in the small house on Cherry Street. A 911 call from a trembling male voice broke the stillness of that morning. Police arrived at the scene within minutes of Colby Trickle's emergency call. They found a pale-faced 23-year-old man in his pajamas, shaking as he stood at the doorway. Colby led them to the bedroom, where a heartbreaking sight awaited. Kristen Trickle lying on the floor, blood still seeping from a head wound. A large-caliber handgun was found near her body, seemingly confirming Colby's statement of a tragic suicide. Sergeant Mason Delgado, the first officer on scene, immediately sensed something was off. Though the scene looked straightforward, small details caught the eye of the seasoned officer. Kristen was in her pajamas, but lightly made up. Her personal items were neatly arranged. There were no signs of a struggle, but also no signs of someone preparing to end her life. Delgado closely observed Colby as he recounted his story. Colby claimed he woke up to a strange ringing in his ears and discovered Kristen had shot herself. He appeared distraught, but there was a detachment in his emotions that made Delgado uneasy. Despite the tears, Colby's eyes lacked the genuine grief one would expect from a man who had just lost his young wife. The crime scene team began collecting evidence. They photographed the gun, a Glock 17 Colby confirmed was his, and documented the position of the body, bloodstains, and every detail in the room. One particular detail drew their attention. Kristen's phone was on her nightstand, with multiple alarms set for the day, not something one would expect from someone intending not to wake up. As news of Kristen's death spread, her family responded with deep skepticism. Her parents, the Rivers, immediately rejected the possibility of suicide. Mary Rivers, Kristen's mother, insisted her daughter would never do such a thing. Kristen was optimistic, full of life, and had many plans for the future. Just the day before, she had excitedly talked to her mother about decorating the house for Halloween and plans for the upcoming winter holidays. Even more telling, according to the family, Kristen had a deep fear of guns. She had never touched Colby's firearm and often expressed discomfort when he brought it into the house. The idea that she would use something she feared to end her life seemed completely absurd. Lead detective Alicia Reyes was assigned to the case. With over 15 years of experience in homicide investigations, Reyes knew things were not always as they seemed. She began gathering information from those close to the young couple. Kristen's friends described a complicated relationship. They spoke of a jealous and controlling Colby, who frequently checked his wife's phone and limited her social interactions. Kristen's close friend, Sarah Martinez, told detectives that just 2 weeks before the incident, Kristen confided in her about wanting to leave the marriage. She felt trapped and unhappy, but was also afraid of how Colby would react if she brought up divorce. As the investigation progressed, Detective Reyes conducted several interviews with Colby Trickle. Each time, his story changed slightly but noticeably. At first, Colby claimed he woke up due to ringing in his ears and found Kristen had shot herself. In a second interview, he added that he had previously contemplated suicide and had placed the gun in the nightstand drawer, a detail he had not mentioned before. When questioned about their finances, Colby initially denied having any life insurance policy for Kristen. But detectives soon discovered a $250,000 policy signed just 3 months before her death. Confronted with this, Colby changed his story, saying he forgot and that Kristen had asked him to get the policy after researching it on his phone. Detectives reviewed Colby's phone search history and found multiple disturbing queries. How to tell suicide from homicide gunshot wounds? Does life insurance pay for suicide? And most notably, does husband get insurance money if wife commits suicide? All made in the weeks leading up to Kristen's death. Colby claimed Kristen had used his phone to look up those things as part of her alleged suicidal planning. However, when detectives checked Walmart surveillance footage from a trip where Colby said Kristen used his phone to look up insurance information, they clearly saw only Colby using the phone the entire time, never handing it to Kristen as he claimed. A deeper examination of Colby's phone revealed a series of text messages with a woman named Jessica Reynolds. The messages showed a budding romantic relationship, with Colby flirting and expressing dissatisfaction with his marriage. In one message, sent just a week before Kristen's death, he wrote, "I wish I were free so we could be together. Everything's going to change soon. I promise." When questioned, Jessica admitted to the relationship but insisted she had no idea Colby intended to harm his wife. She recalled Colby often spoke of ending his marriage and starting fresh with her, but never mentioned violence. The investigation also uncovered troubling lies about Colby's background. He often bragged about a stellar military career, claiming to have served in special units and completed dangerous missions. But when detectives reviewed his military records, they found Colby had only served briefly before being discharged for failing to meet basic standards. These fabrications painted a pattern of deceit and self-aggrandizement. Perhaps most revealing was Colby's behavior after Kristen's death. Just a month after receiving the insurance payout, he purchased a new sports car, an expensive sound system, and, most shockingly, a life-size sex doll worth thousands of dollars. These extravagant purchases didn't align with the image of a grieving widower, with mounting evidence suggesting Kristen's death was not a suicide. Prosecutors requested a psychological autopsy to assess Kristen's mental state prior to her death. Dr. Ashley Christensen, a respected forensic psychologist, was assigned the task. Dr. Christensen conducted a comprehensive investigation into Kristen's life and mental health. She interviewed family, friends, co-workers, and reviewed all messages, emails, and social media activity from the months before her death. Her report concluded that Kristen had a low risk of suicide. She had no history of mental illness, showed no signs of severe depression, and lacked the common risk factors associated with suicide. Dr. Christensen particularly emphasized that Kristen had numerous future plans. She had enrolled in spring semester classes at the local college, bought plane tickets to visit her sister in California in December, and had already begun shopping for Christmas present. These actions were not typical of someone preparing to end their life. Meanwhile, the autopsy raised serious doubts about Colby's version of events. The angle and position of the gunshot wound were not consistent with a self-inflicted shot. Furthermore, no gunshot residue was found on Kristen's hands, which would be expected if she had fired the weapon. Additionally, detectives analyzed data from Kristen's smartwatch. It showed her heart rate spiking abruptly at around 2:00 a.m., 3 hours before Colby called 911, and then flatlining. This directly contradicted Colby's claim that he found her immediately after the incident. After nearly a year of investigation, Colby Trickle was charged with first-degree murder. The trial began under intense scrutiny from the community and the local press. District Attorney Elizabeth Warren painted a picture of a man driven by greed, control, and a desire for freedom to pursue a new relationship. Warren argued that Colby had 3 powerful motives to kill his wife: the insurance money, his relationship with Jessica, and the fear that Kristen might leave him and ruin the perfect image he had tried to build. She presented a range of evidence, from Colby's conflicting statements to suspicious internet searches and his reckless spending following Kristen's death. Defense attorney James Donovan attempted to present a different narrative. He argued that Kristen had a history of depression that she kept hidden from family and friends. He presented several messages in which Kristen expressed dissatisfaction with her life, and argued that the details of the wound location and gunshot residue could be explained by an atypical suicide scenario. However, this argument was weakened when Dr. Christensen testified about her psychological evaluation. She explained in detail why Kristen did not fit the profile of someone at high risk of suicide, and refuted the idea that the messages cited by the defense reflected clinical depression rather than normal life frustrations. One of the turning points of the trial came when Jessica Reynolds took the stand. She described her relationship with Colby and how he had talked about wanting to start a new life with her. Particularly shocking was her testimony about a conversation that took place just 2 days before Kristen's death, in which Colby said he would soon be free and that they could start over with no burdens. Another witness, one of Colby's co-workers, recounted a disturbing conversation in which Colby asked about how to stage a fake suicide. Although Colby later laughed and said it was just a joke, the witness was disturbed enough to remember the conversation. After 4 days of deliberation, the jury returned a verdict. Colby Trickle was guilty of premeditated first-degree murder. During sentencing, Judge Richard Coleman emphasized the cold and calculated nature of the crime. He described how Colby had exploited his wife's trust and carefully planned to kill her, all for money and the freedom to pursue a new relationship. Judge Coleman sentenced Colby to life in prison without the possibility of parole for 50 years, the maximum penalty allowed under state law. In the courtroom, Kristen's family embraced and wept, finally feeling that justice had been served for their beloved daughter, sister, and niece. After the trial, The medical examiner's office officially amended Kristen's death certificate, changing the cause of death from suicide to homicide. This was a significant victory for the family, who had insisted from the beginning that Kristen would never have taken her own life. Kristen Trickle's death and the subsequent investigation brought increased awareness of domestic violence and the warning signs of dangerous relationships. Her family established the Kristen Trickle Memorial Fund to support victims of domestic abuse and raise awareness about toxic relationships. The case also led to changes in how suspicious deaths are investigated in the county, with new protocols put in place to ensure that suicide claims are thoroughly scrutinized before being accepted. Lead Detective Reyes became an outspoken advocate for these changes, often referencing the Trickle case as an example of the importance of thorough investigations. For Kristen's loved ones, no verdict could bring back the bright and vibrant young woman they loved, but having the truth exposed and justice served brought them a sense of closure. Mary Rivers, Kristen's mother, spoke after the trial. "We always knew Kristen would never take her own life. She loved life too much. Now the world knows the truth too, and the man who took her life will pay for what he did." Kristen Trickle's case is a heartbreaking reminder that sometimes the greatest threats don't come from strangers, but from those closest to us. It also highlights the importance of persistence in seeking truth and justice, even when appearances suggest a different conclusion. In the crowded courtroom on sentencing day, a photo of Kristen sat on the prosecutor's table, a young woman with a radiant smile and eyes full of life. That was the image her loved ones wanted the world to remember, not the victim of a brutal crime, but a passionate young woman with a bright future ahead, a future she never had the chance to live. The investigation into Kristen Trickle's case was marked by numerous key developments, each one bringing detectives closer to the truth. One of the most crucial discoveries came from the digital analysis of the couple's electronic devices. Data forensic experts recovered many deleted messages from Colby's phone, including conversations with Jessica Reynolds that he had tried to erase after Kristen's death. These messages not only confirmed the extramarital affair but also revealed that Colby had been planning a future with Jessica, even before Kristen died. Another critical discovery came from a convenience store security camera near the Trickle home. The footage showed Colby's car leaving the house around 1:30 a.m., just minutes before Kristen's smartwatch recorded a sudden spike in her heart rate. The car returned around 2:15 a.m. When confronted with this evidence, Colby could not explain why he had left the house in the middle of the night or why he had failed to mention it in his previous statements. Detectives also interviewed the couple's neighbors and found a key witness. Elaine Cooper, who lived across the street, recalled hearing a loud argument from the Trickle house the night before Kristen's death. Shouting and the sound of objects breaking came from the home for about an hour. Mrs. Cooper considered calling the police but ultimately decided not to get involved. Her testimony directly contradicted Colby's claim that he and Kristen had a peaceful evening before the tragedy. Another significant detail uncovered during the investigation was the couple's financial situation. Despite appearing stable, detectives discovered that Colby had accumulated significant debt from payday loans and credit cards, debt Kristen was unaware of. He had secretly withdrawn money from their joint savings account to pay off these debts and was under increasing financial pressure. The $250,000 insurance payout would not only resolve these issues, but also allow Colby to live the extravagant lifestyle he had always desired. A key part of the case came from the detailed forensic analyses conducted by Dr. Marcus Chen, a leading forensic expert. Based on the angle of the wound, blood spatter patterns, and the position of the weapon, Dr. Chen concluded that the likelihood Kristen had shot herself was extremely low. The wound on Kristen's head was at a strange angle that would be very difficult to achieve if she had held the gun herself. Moreover, the gun was found farther from her body than is typical in gun-related suicides. Gunshot residue tests on Kristen's hands also came back negative, which was inconsistent with the suicide theory. On the contrary, according to initial reports, a small amount of gunshot residue was found on Colby's hand, even though he claimed he never touched the weapon after finding his wife. Another important scientific aspect of the case came from data on Kristen's smartwatch. In addition to recording the sudden spike in her heart rate before it stopped, the watch also logged movement data indicating she had been physically active shortly before her heart rate ceased, consistent with a struggle or attempt to resist rather than a voluntary act of ending her life. Delving deeper, Trickle's past, detectives uncovered a troubling pattern of manipulative and controlling behavior. An ex-girlfriend, Lauren Davidson, came forward after hearing about the case on the news. Lauren described a tumultuous relationship with Colby 3 years prior, in which he frequently controlled her activities, isolated her from friends and family, and had frightening outbursts when she tried to reclaim her independence. Especially notable was Lauren's account of an incident in which Colby threatened to harm himself when she tried to end the relationship, a classic emotional manipulation tactic. This detail was especially relevant in re-evaluating Colby's initial claim that he had previously contemplated suicide. Something detectives now suspected was an effort to explain why the gun was within Kristen's reach. Former co-workers of Colby also described him as someone who exaggerated his accomplishments and frequently lied about his skills and achievements. One former classmate recalled that Colby used to create elaborate stories about athletic feats that never happened and seemed to genuinely believe his own fabrications. The digital investigation continued to provide crucial clues as data experts examined the couple's computer. On Colby's computer, they found a suspicious browsing history, including searches for the toxicity of sleeping pills, how to make a murder look like a suicide, and how long to receive life insurance after a wife dies. Notably, these searches were made in incognito mode, but technical experts were still able to recover them from the computer's cache. These searches occurred while Kristen was working the night shift at the local hospital, where she worked as a nursing assistant, proving that Colby, not Kristen, was the one interested in these topics. Additionally, detectives discovered that Colby had downloaded and then deleted a GPS tracking app on Kristen's phone, allowing him to track her location at all times. This fit the control pattern described by Kristen's friends and highlighted Colby's fear that she might be trying to escape the relationship. As the case progressed and Colby was arrested, many people from his life began to speak out about what they had witnessed. A colleague from the insurance company where Colby worked recalled a troubling conversation just a week before Kristen's death. In this conversation, Colby specifically inquired about the terms of life insurance policies, particularly asking whether the company thoroughly investigated suicide cases. A particularly shocking discovery came from Kristen's diary, found hidden in a drawer at her workplace. In her final entries, she expressed growing concerns about Colby's erratic behavior and her fear for her safety. Just 3 days before her death, she wrote about finding Colby rummaging through her purse and how he became enraged when she asked him what he was looking for. She also mentioned plans to speak with a lawyer about the possibility of divorce, a plan she would never have the chance to carry out. Kristen's diary also revealed that she had started documenting Colby's troubling behavior, even saving screenshots of threatening messages he sent her. It appeared she was building a case for his abusive behavior, perhaps in preparation for the impending divorce. Detectives believed that the discovery of these documents may have prompted Colby to act. Based on all the gathered evidence, the detectives constructed a timeline of Kristen's final hours. On that fateful night, the couple had a major argument heard by several neighbors. Mrs. Cooper was not the only one to witness the incident. Another neighbor reported hearing shouting and the sound of breaking objects coming from the Trickle home. After this argument, Colby likely left the house for a short time, captured by security cameras at a convenience store. Detectives believed he might have gone outside to cool down or possibly retrieve something from his car. When he returned, the argument likely continued and escalated into violence. Data from Kristen's smartwatch showed her heart rate spiked around 2 a.m., possibly due to fear or during a struggle. Shortly after, her heart rate stopped entirely, the point at which experts believe she was shot. However, Colby did not call 911 until nearly 5 a.m., a 3-hour window that remains unexplained, during which detectives believed he staged the scene to make it appear as a suicide. Bloodstains in the bathroom indicated Colby tried to clean himself up after the incident, and signs suggested he had moved Kristen's body to create a scene that fit the suicide hypothesis. The gun was placed carefully near Kristen's hand, but not close enough to explain the lack of gunpowder residue on her hand. The Kristen Trickle case had a profound impact on the community and the local criminal justice system. It changed the way law enforcement agencies handled suspicious deaths, especially those initially thought to be suicides. The county sheriff's office established a specialized unit to investigate unusual deaths, with specific training on signs of domestic violence and abusive relationships. Kristen's story also raised awareness of the warning signs of controlling and toxic relationships. Domestic violence experts used the case to illustrate how controlling behavior, tracking, isolating from friends and family, and controlling finances is often a precursor to more severe violence. The Kristen Trickle Memorial Fund, established by her family, provided scholarships for students pursuing careers in trauma counseling and victim support. The fund also sponsored educational programs at high schools and colleges about domestic violence and recognizing unhealthy relationships. For the criminal justice system, the case emphasized the importance of listening to victims' families, who often have valuable insights into the character and daily behavior of their loved ones. Without Kristen's family's persistence in demanding further investigation, her death might have been recorded as a suicide, and Colby might never have faced justice. The case also highlighted the critical role of technology in solving modern crimes. From smartwatch data to surveillance cameras and digital forensics, these tools provided crucial clues that may not have been available in investigations a generation ago. After the trial, Colby Trickle was transferred to a maximum security correctional facility to begin serving his life sentence. In the months following his conviction, he continued to maintain his innocence and filed an appeal, but the appeal was dismissed for lack of merit. While Colby denied his crime in public, sources from prison reported that he had confessed to other inmates about killing Kristen. A cellmate contacted investigators, claiming that in a moment of weakness, Colby admitted to shooting Kristen after a heated argument about their extramarital affair and financial situation. The life insurance payout Colby received before his arrest was seized and ultimately returned to Kristen's family. They used part of the money to establish the memorial fund and the remainder to create a memorial garden at the local park, where Kristen often jogged, a peaceful space to remember a life cut short too soon. The story of Kristen Trickle's death serves as a heartbreaking reminder that sometimes the greatest threats come from those we trust the most. It is also a testament to the power of perseverance and the search for truth and justice. When Kristen's body was found on that cold Halloween morning, it seemed like a simple yet tragic story. A young woman who had ended her life too soon. But thanks to her family's persistence, the professionalism of the detectives, and the power of forensic science, a different truth was revealed. Kristen Trickle was not a woman who gave up on life in despair, but a victim of greed and betrayal. She was a young woman trying to escape a toxic relationship and start a new life, only to have that opportunity taken away by the man who had promised to love and protect her. Detective Alicia Reyes, who led the investigation, later commented that in her career, she had never seen a case more clearly illustrating the dangers of ignoring warning signs in relationships. From control and isolation to constant lies about money and personal achievements, this pattern ended in the most tragic way imaginable. In the crowded courtroom on sentencing day, many people wore purple, the color of the domestic violence awareness movement, to honor Kristen and the countless others who have lost their lives in similar circumstances. It was a touching gesture, a reminder that Kristen's death, though painful, was not in vain. Through her story, others can learn how to recognize the dangerous signs and seek help before it's too late. Today, Kristen's tombstone no longer bears suicide as the ending to her short life. Instead, it stands as a reminder of a life full of potential and love, a life worth remembering not for how it ended, but for the joy and warmth Kristen brought to everyone who knew her. In a quiet corner of the cemetery, beneath the shade of an oak tree, fresh flowers are regularly placed on her grave, a testament to the enduring love her family and friends have for her, and a promise that although Kristen is gone, she will never be forgotten.